Good afternoon and or late evening. Today is Sunday, the 10th of November, 2019. I'm Brach Jennings.
And I'm Peter Clark.
And this is your friendly neighborhood Lutheran theology, but ecumenically sensitive, Stumbling Block podcast.
And it's my turn to be sick this week.
Yeah, Peter, you haven't been sick on our podcast in several years, have you?
No, I'm at least not audibly.
Yeah, what happened?
I don't know, just got sick. Out more. It's that time of year. We had an early cold snap this year.
Yeah, what's the temperature up there in Wisconsin?
Right about freezing.
Yeah, that's what we are in Tübingen, too. And I got to the point where I said, I just don't want to go out today. I'm staying holed up in my room.
Now, see, right about freezing is right about where I like it, actually.
Really?
Just above freezing.
And why is that? Does it remind you of ice hockey games?
No, my body is very comfortable there.
Okay.
Just throw on a sweater and I'm good.
Oh, not even a jacket, just a sweater?
I have a pretty heavy sweater that I wear, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Fair. Well, listeners, we have to start doing a bit shorter podcasts due to the program that Peter is in for his mental health and his flourishing.
Yeah, we've been pretty wiped during the week, so...
Yes, this is, I can vouch for this, having conversed with Peter a few times, that he was pretty wiped out. How long does this program go for?
Like 4 to 5 weeks.
4 to 5 weeks, okay. So for the next 4 to 5 weeks, we're going to have shorter episodes. And then, if everything goes according to the universe, we would resume our normal time.
Yep. That's the plan, anyway.
I like it. That's the plan, and we'll see what the Holy Spirit does, right?
Yep.
All right. Well, today we thought we would talk a little bit about languages and reading. Those both sound very broad, but we're going to make them more specific. And let's start with the reading part, because Peter has begun Stephen King's The Gunslinger.
I have. I'm about 20% to 25% of the way through.
It's really not that well of a written book, is it?
It really isn't.
Remember, he was 19 when he started.
I know, and I still have no idea what the hell is going on. There's just one guy following this other guy. I have no idea why. I think there's a bounty involved, but I'm not sure why there's a bounty on the other guy's head. I've met a zombie.
A zombie? You've met a talking bird.
I met a talking bird, but I've also met a guy who used to be dead and is not dead anymore.
Oh yeah, him in the pub when Roland shoots the pub out.
Yeah,
it's a great scene, isn't it?
It's a confusing scene. I don't know what's going on.
But don't you just love the Talking Raven?
The Talking Raven was cool. I did like that.
I know, and I'm so sad that Zoltan is such a minor character, because I really, part of the reason that I read all 8 of these books was because I wanted Zoltan to come back, and he never did.
That'd be nice.
Thousands and thousands of pages I waited for Zoltan. So, you're not catching the existentialist theological themes yet, I see.
Not really, because I can't see the big picture yet.
Okay. Well, book 1 is a little clunky. Did you read the introduction, by the way, on being 19 and other things?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, he owns that it's not his best written book.
Okay, good. Because I taught this last year in a theology and science fiction class in Chicago.
Yeah.
And I begged the seminary students to please read the introduction before they read the book.
Let King apologize for it before you get going.
Yeah, if I could do it again, I would have taught book 3 in the series. Book 3 is wonderful. But yeah, book 1 is a little clunky. So, okay, well, we'll check back in after you maybe finish the first book, because then you ought to have at least a better idea of maybe where he's going.
Yeah, it's clunky enough. I'm actually thinking about switching to Mysterium Pascalum for a little bit.
don't okay, don't give up on the Dark Tower. This is what happens with Dark Tower readers. Is you start reading book one and you go, well, damn, this doesn't read like it at all.
Well, I'm not expecting
And
it to read like it, and I understand that it gets better later, like I have to power through it, but I may just have to take a break from it for a little bit.
well, I mean, I can't criticize that because, like I said, it took me a year and a half to read it.
Yeah.
Then again, I also was I was just reading Dark Tower on the side, but I think even if you weren't reading other things, Dark Tower is still. I mean, it's a marathon I signed you up for. Aren't you
Mm-hmm.
happy?
Oh, love those marathons.
Well, Mysterium Piscala really is wonderful. And for our listeners, that is the von Balthasar text with which we hope to converse with Dr. Ann Carpenter about.
Yes, that is correct.
Well, okay, then we can check back a little bit later on King when the theology still starts, or when the theology starts to come more into play. You haven't met Jake yet, have you?
I don't think so.
Okay, no, you'd remember if you did.
Okay.
Jake is wonderful. Just remember, Peter, there are other worlds than these.
Okay.
Sorry, that's my evil cackle.
I know, right?
Well, shall we shift now into sort of the thing that you wanted to share with us today? And this, actually, you wanted to talk a little bit about when you learned Latin in high
Mm-hmm.
school. And I was so surprised to hear this that I thought we should devote an episode to this.
Well, yeah.
You learned Latin like it was a living language.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about that, because I'm trying to learn Latin well enough to translate right now, and let me tell you, learning from Latin into German is killing me.
When I graduated from high school, I was about as close as you get to fluent in Latin.
As in, you could have picked up Augustine's Confessions and read them in Latin.
Not only that, I could have written a response to them in Latin.
Holy... I'm not going to say what I was going to say on the air. Okay. Wow.
I learned to write Latin. I learned to speak Latin. I learned to read Latin.
You realize that most classicists who have PhDs in that stuff can't do that.
I know. It's how I was taught, though. My first Latin teacher taught it to us as a living language.
How, like, please elaborate on that. I believe you. This is not a disbelief. This is a, holy crap, I want that teacher.
I know. Magistra Witt is amazing. She still teaches at Minnehaha Academy in the Twin Cities. She's won numerous teaching awards. She's just an amazing teacher.
Okay, so tell us about her method, because this is incredible, Peter.
Well, she taught it
You
like
could
she
have got
teach Spanish.
you could have gotten a degree in classics.
At one point in time, I thought I was going to, but I don't
Oh
know, I
my
didn't.
God, Peter, this is astonishing.
The thing that got me burned out? I got burned out on translating. Because once I got into high school, once I got into the higher levels of Latin, they stopped treating it like a living language. We were no longer translating from English to Latin. We were only translating from Latin to English, and I found that to be kind of boring.
So, how old were you when this amazing teacher started speaking to you in Latin and all of that?
11.
You were at the perfect age to learn a language.
I was. I still probably speak good enough Latin to read most inscriptions in the public forums in Rome.
I mean, I don't know what to say, because I'm sitting here trying to diagram sentences in all these damn colors
Oh, we never did that.
and wanting to die. Not because I don't like Latin, but because, well, part of it is because I'm trying to go from Latin to German to English.
Right.
So I got this extra little step in the middle called German.
Yeah, no, so that's fun, quote unquote fun.
But there is this book online, and if anybody listening is a classic scholar, you are probably going to think I'm a heretic, but I don't care. It's called, that you can order on Amazon, it's called Lingua Latina per se illustrata, Familia Romana. And this book starts you out from page 1 as just reading Latin. The whole text is in Latin, and it's really simple texts. I mean, super simple, to the point of Centrum est magnus numerus. That's one of the sentences. Tres parvus numerus est. You see how simple these are?
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, as you work through this book, the sentences get more complex and more complex and more complex and more complex. And apparently, this is a quote-unquote new way to learn a language. But it almost sounds to me like that's similar to the way that you were taught.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I've taken from a couple different teachers, so I've used both the Oxford and the Cambridge Latin courses. I can't remember which one I liked better. One of them definitely has more of a stress on Latin as a living language. You start out with very simple sentences, and you start out with translating things both ways, which I think is very important, to be able to translate things both ways, to really understand a language. Actually, that was something that we didn't get a lot into it, but in my intro to biblical Koine Greek class, we did a little bit of translating both ways. So we got an idea of idiom use and things like that, which is very important to translation. I actually had a master's thesis topic started by the time I stopped Latin in high school.
Which was?
There's, I can't remember what play it is, but there's a guy who's gotten knocked out drunk, and they start saying things to him, and one of the things they end up saying no one has ever successfully translated. And I took one look at it, and I said, well, that's because it's not supposed to be. It's a nonsense phrase. They're seeing if he's even comprehending nonsense.
Mm-hmm. So, Peter...
Yes?
You literally had a revolutionary breakthrough approach to teaching Latin in the 21st century.
20th, but yeah.
20th to 21st century.
Yeah.
Because somebody spoke it to you when you were 11.
Yeah. And she began her class with, I can't remember the word for students, but Solway. And then we
Discipuli, discipulita?
Yeah. Solway discipuli, and then we had to reply Solway magistra.
Yeah, we do that too, but that's the only Latin we actually speak.
Oh, no, as much as possible, she spoke Latin. By 3 years in, I was roughly conversational.
So why don't classic scholars emphasize being conversational in Latin?
Because that's the way people view a dead language. Because there's no need to translate things into Latin, right? There's no pressing need. We don't write in Latin anymore, not even academically.
Luther did,
but we don't. And so people don't teach you how to write in Latin. Never mind that actually learning to write Latin was one of the best note-taking skills I ever learned.
Like you took your notes in Latin?
Yeah, because Latin inscriptions has all kinds of abbreviations and shortenings.
Right. We still use them.
Right, we still use a lot of them, but not all of them. And so I would use those abbreviations in my notes.
Peter, you really could have done a PhD in classics.
I probably could have.
You still could, you know.
Yeah, but I don't really want to.
So what do you think of this book, though, that I was telling you about, that I was reading a little bit from, that it starts out with those so elementary sentences that anyone who speaks an Indo-European language can understand, and you begin to learn Latin that way.
Well, it sounds fascinating. I mean, it sounds like a good book.
I'm thinking about buying it to supplement my Latin class at the university.
That might not be a bad idea.
There's also another thing I signed up for, by the way, which is called Latinum UK, and I now pay €4.75 a month for this thing, and it's all audio lessons based on a Latin grammar that was written in the late 19th century, when the emphasis was still on speaking it.
Yeah.
Now, I'm starting to feel bad that we're gonna... I've said this, and we're gonna, put this on the air and make it public, and I'm supposed to be getting a PhD, and I'm talking about something from the 19th century.
Whatever.
Doesn't really make me sound like a current scholar, but oh well.
One of my favorite accordances is the Thayer from the early 20th century.
Is that the Thayer grammar?
Concordance. Yeah. No, the Thayer concordance. Sorry, not accordance. Concordance.
Oh, concordance. Okay. I,
Because it properly translates. Well, the thing, what it does is because no one wants to print dirty words in a biblical concordance, right?
well, right, if you're a pietist.
Well, a lot of people working on concordances are pietists. It's one of the
Yeah.
reasons that we say when Paul says a dog returns to its own filth.
No, he doesn't actually say that.
He doesn't
says
actually say
something.
that. He
Yeah.
says, but the Thayer concordance actually translates that word to the Latin stercorum.
Which I'm pretty sure means
It does.
Okay.
But so he uses the dirty words in Latin, right? To get around printing dirty words in a concordance. He prints the Latin.
Oh, I think that's
And I
awesome.
and I know a lot of the dirty words in Latin.
Will you teach him to me sometime?
Oh, I don't know as many of them as I know. I know how to say "f you" and the horse you rode it on, but
Yes, please teach me off the air how to say that.
okay. I have a whole Latin. I'll have a whole Latin phrase book I might loan you.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
Yeah,
But
no,
okay,
so here's the thing. This is my best recommendation for learning Latin. Are you familiar with the Asterix and Obelix series of cartoons?
Oh God. Oh no. Yes.
They sell them in Latin.
Seriously?
Seriously.
You want me to get asterisks and obelisks in Latin?
It was so when we used to take grammar tests or any test in our Latin class, if we got done early, we could go grab Asterix and Obelix in Latin.
You might actually get me to read comic books. Remember, Peter, it has too many pictures. I can't understand it.
I know, but it's a shot. So actually, one of the things that she would have us do, one of the projects we did was we had to take comic strips and translate them into Latin, which was interesting because it forced us to actually come up with our own Latin words for things sometimes. Because there isn't a Latin word for school bus, or there isn't a Latin word for torpedo, or submarine, or things like that.
So what did you use?
For torpedoes, I used aerotube. For submarine, I called it a sunken boat.
What is sucking boat in Latin?
I forget. Something nauta. Nauta subaqua or something like that.
Okay, so now when we first came back, when we first resurrected the podcast, I did a little
No,
rant.
that's not right because nauta is nauta sailor.
You are asking the wrong person. Remember, I'm trying to survive my Latin class at the moment.
Sorry. It's taking me back, man. It's taking me back.
That is precisely my goal, and I just want to keep right on taking you back.
Nauta is sailor.
So sunken sailor?
Boat is nawis. So is nawis subaqua.
Nawis subaqua is how you say sunken boat in Latin.
Well, a boat underwater. Yeah.
I love this. Oh, by the way, Peter, I do know how to say cat in Latin. Catus.
Yeah.
But what I have to do is we're translating snippets from Cicero.
Oh, wow.
That's the goal of this class. We're not doing it right now, but the book that we're using is the vocab and the grammar to get Cicero.
Just throw you butt first into the middle depths.
Yeah. So I'm thinking those other methods might help me to actually read Latin.
Yeah, see, this is the problem with learning to translate as opposed to learning to speak or to read.
See, I want to learn how to read Latin.
Yeah, so
which I think is very different from saying I want to learn how to translate it.
Right. There are a shocking number of modern books translated into Latin, especially children's books.
Oh, wow. You're going to make me get Harry Potter in Latin now, aren't you?
I wasn't going to start you that far. I know they sell some Dr. Seuss in Latin. I have The Grinch Who Stole Christmas in Latin. Genius.
How do you say? I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like them, Sam. I am.
I don't know. I don't have that one. Yeah, I can't remember like anymore. But eggs would be ova vertum.
Listeners, Peter Clark, Latin genius.
I'm not a Latin genius. I just took 7 years of it.
Yes, but Peter, please understand. There are brilliant Tübingen students who have taken the same amount of years of Latin that you have and can't read it.
That's fascinating to me. Like I used to read the Psalms in Latin.
Well, pull your Vulgate out again and start doing it again. We can do it together.
There you go. I should. I have the Psalms and I have some of Paul's letters. I think I might have Romans in Latin.
Did you ever read like Augustine or Cicero or?
I've read a little history, but mostly I stuck to poetry.
Okay, Psalms and Paul. What other poetry did you read in
Well,
Latin?
I've read the Metamorphoses in Latin. I've read the Aeneid in Latin.
Pause. You read the Metamorphoses and the Aeneid in Latin without a dictionary?
I mean, I'm sure I needed a dictionary from time to time, but mostly, yeah.
Peter,
What?
that is astonishing.
That was in high school.
Not because I doubt your ability to do it. That's not what I mean. It's the fact that Latin was taught in such a way that it empowered you to do that.
Yeah, I can't imagine it being taught any other way.
So, what do you think then is the difference between learning to read Latin and learning to translate Latin?
Well, learning to translate. So I can translate Greek. I'm a functional Greek translator.
Uh-huh.
I can look at it. I know how to look up parts of speech and things like that. I know how to, do all that and analyze what it is, right? Like if you give me, I see the word holos. I'm like, okay, I know the root is holon. I know that it's an adjective. I know that it's in the neuter singular nominative. I know that it means all. Right? So that's a simple one. I just pulled up right here.
Mm-hmm.
But so I know a basic number of words and things like that and how to translate them. And then I know how to look up words that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I know how to read analyses of words and concordances and things like that and analyze this could mean this or this could mean that or whatever. That's translating. When I could read Latin, it would never occur to me to refer to a concordance. At the most, I'd refer to a dictionary because I just knew what the case meant. I knew what the context meant. If you showed me a sentence in context, so one of the things you learn to do when reading poetry in Latin is because the word order is so fluid in Latin that actually they'll use that to create imagery within the poem. So there's a great example of this in Ovid where he's talking about water in a river and the words for water in a river flow through the center of the poem. That's reading Latin.
I would much rather do that than translate it. So how do I get to that point, Peter? And is it going to kill me doing so?
Well, do you have 6 years?
Yeah, so it's going to take that long.
That's how long it took me, and I'm good with languages.
Well,
I mean, you can get there. The question is whether or not you really... how badly do you want to? And that's like reading high-end Latin. Like I say, I was as fluent as... I don't want to be braggadocious.
Be braggadocious. Go for it.
But I was probably as fluent in Latin as... I was probably in the, on the planet, at least in the top 10% of people being fluent in Latin. Like I was very fluent in Latin. I was thinking in Latin.
Oh my God. I'm in awe right now that Latin was taught like that. And my criticism when we first resurrected the podcast, my criticism of the loss of languages at seminaries, the real problem may be that languages aren't being taught like what you're describing. For instance, when we learned Koine Greek in seminary, why weren't they just speaking Greek to us?
We don't have time for that. You don't have 6 years. My Greek improved over the course of my time at seminary because I continued to use it, and I very purposefully continued to use it.
Uh-huh.
And so your Greek gets better over time. So my Greek is better now than it was when I started seminary. There's still probably sections of John I could pull up and just read and tell you what it meant.
So you'd have to start, really, the 6 years thing may be 6 years if you're 11 years old.
Yeah.
Right? Now, why is that? Is that something developmentally in the brain that when you're 11, you're just better wired to pick up a new language?
Your brain is more plastic when you're younger. College is the last good time to really pick up a language.
So in other
I
words,
only
I'm
took 2
screwed.
years of French, but je parle français meilleur que latin.
Um, I I know no French.
I just said I speak French better than Latin.
Seriously?
At this
So
point
wait
in
a
my
minute.
life, yeah.
So do you read in French?
No.
Oh,
I strictly speak.
okay.
I can read. If you put me in a grocery store where everything was labeled in French, I could survive. Right? Or
I nearly, I nearly broke down in tears looking for ketchup in Germany the other day just to find out it's called, you guessed it, ketchup.
yeah. Yeah, the furthest variant that gets is catsup. Um, but if you handed me a menu for a decent cafe, nothing too fancy, I could get by. If you hand me Le Petit Prince, I'm lost. And
I think
that's a
Karl
low
Barth.
level reading book.
I think Karl Barth for me is easier to read in German than a restaurant menu. What does that say about me?
It says you're learning theological Greek.
German, but yeah.
German, I mean, sorry, you're learning theological German. It's the context you're learning it in and for.
Yeah, that's true. Although my speaking and my German in general has improved astronomically over the last 7 months. I'm so surprised. Like, I'm really so surprised. Dr. Maltman gave me an article at the beginning of October. It was a short piece that he wrote recently for Evangelische Theologie on public theology and political theology. And it was, 5 or 6 pages. It wasn't long, but it was still academic writing, and I read the whole thing without a dictionary
There you go.
and understood it.
Hey, that's really good.
I know, but maybe this is what you're talking about. This kind of immersion in the languages takes the fear away, but I don't have that kind of immersion in Latin right now. My teacher is good. This is not a complaint against my teacher, but it's still a dead language. It hasn't popped to life yet. It's
Right.
trapped in the historical archives.
Right, and it will be. I mean, I can almost guarantee you at the seminary level, at the doctoral level, it really will be.
But I really want it to pop to life. So will you help me with that?
I'll do my best.
Excellent.
I'll pull together
I'll
some resources and some recommendations for you.
Oh, you're wonderful. I'm so appreciative. And listeners, I hope that you feel a little bit inspired to have a look at Latin, this language that is the mother of so many Romance languages and Germanic languages.
Or let us know what languages you guys speak that you took in high school or college or whatever, and still parlez-vous a smattering of. Our email address. Our email address is stumblingblockpodcast@gmail.com.
I'm having a case of the giggles right
You
now.
really are.
Until next week, I'm Brock Jennings,
And I'm Peter Clark.
and this has been your friendly neighborhood Lutheran theology, Latin-loving podcast, Stumbling Block.
Stumbling Block is a production of Silver Turkey Studios. Our Patreon producer is Ben Dittman, our executive producer is Peter Clark, and our executive director is Brock Jennings. Our theme music is by Mirrors for Windows, and we are hosted by Podbean. We can be reached by email at stumblingblockpodcast@gmail.com. Please consider supporting us at patreon.com/stumblingblock. And as always, thank you for listening.